of my discussion. And you'll see that we had traditional environments, and in the cloud, things evolve very, very quickly. Same thing, the attributes of innovation. So from the traditional environments, 4 years ago, we were able to see container technologies, and then we needed to enable them. We needed to support them. And before we could spell Docker, this thing called serverless came in and presented us no option but to enable this as well. And I can guarantee you now that there are great minds out there working for AWS or Azure or Google or other vendors that are thinking about the next big thing that your cool developers, the people that are building those cool applications are using today. And I can only guarantee that this is going to continue, and I can only guarantee that we'll be there and we'll have to say yes to enable those innovations. Now, how do we secure all that? How do we secure a constantly evolving stack? How do we secure across a hybrid environment where, yeah, the cool stuff is out there in some public cloud, but 90% of our stack is inside? And I'm going to talk a bit about what is it that when we talk about securing cloud services, what do we mean by security for the cloud? Now, the bad guys, as Maya eloquently described, they want two things from us, either our data or our compute assets. This is what we have for them to take. They can extort us if we want our data back, if they can encrypt it. We saw that with the ransomware attacks, and they can take care of our infrastructure to drive denial of service attacks and other things, or just mine bitcoins. And when you realize that this is what they want, we know that, or we kind of, when we map the attack vectors, we all know and love the network attack vector. This is what we've been all doing business for the past 25 years, imagining a network and securing the access to those assets through the network. But sometimes it's much easier to hack an identity instead of a network. Why don't I hack the person that has the identity of a person that has access to the network, and through that gain access to the assets on the cloud? But the cloud presented a new thing that we didn't necessarily have on traditional data centers. Cloud presents a very sophisticated and broad control plane that we need to realize that it's there. This is where all the multiple services are configured. This is where a bad guy can take advantage of our less sophistication and not necessarily understanding what the configuration should be when we talk about securing cloud services. And if you haven't been hiding for the past 5 years, or 3 years probably, you could see that there were many organizations that were put at harm's way just by forgetting to configure properly their cloud control plane. It's not just about the network. It wasn't about identity. It was simply forgetting or mismanaging this very new thing that public cloud services presented. And it was Gartner who said, and this is one of the main drivers for Dome 9's success over the past couple of years, is that at least 95% of the attacks are going to be as a result of a customer mistake. And a customer mistake could be a power user forgetting to configure properly his public cloud account, or us as security professionals neglecting the necessary things to keep us secure in that mindset. So how do we beat the hacker, but still empowering those cool developers that are building those great things that we enable them cloud for? And what I want to offer you is an easy-to-follow cloud security contract that you can offer the development teams, the vast people that are using those great infrastructure in protecting, in maintaining your enterprise resiliency and security when you grow in the cloud. And like every good thing, it has 3 parts. First is we have to lead with the threat prevention mindset. In the cloud, you cannot, detection is even worse than in traditional environments, because I can copy terabytes of data in a heartbeat. To take out the terabytes of data from your network could take me some time. In the cloud, this is not the case. So we have to start with threat prevention in the forefront. provide a list of do's and don'ts to your developers, the things that they can do and the things that they cannot do. And if they do the things that cannot do, we'll talk about how to deal with that. And also acknowledge the fact that not all environments are created equally. You have development environments, production environments, marketing apps, apps that are under certain compliance standards. You need to realize that when you look at the broader story, you have some granularity in the way we enforce policy. And we all know and love the threat prevention architecture coming from Check Point with CloudGuard. Yes, our ability to segment the network on a macro level, use the advanced threat protection capabilities of our product with the technologies like Threat Cloud that integrates with it. And this is the basic. This is the building block, the blueprint, as you see here, when we talk about security in the public cloud. The cloud security contract, and I made the font a bit larger for those at the last row, is our way of making sure that developers understand what we as security professionals, what we want from them. And the reality is that public cloud vendors do a great job in offering us gazillion of configuration elements to make our data, our applications, our services, and our servers more secure. But we need to use them properly. It takes just one checkbox to encrypt storage, to encrypt a storage bucket. It takes another checkbox to make sure it is a private, unless, in this case, we have this tag that qualifies what should be public or not. And a thing like ciphers and what's the deletion policy of a database table, and we have to learn. We have to learn through the process. But the reality is that we can, with the technology that I'm going to show you, we can present this contract to our developer teams, and we can get them to sign off of it and go and prosper in the cloud. And when we talk about risk-driven action, is, okay, what do I do when something is not as we said in the contract? And in this case, I'm going to use the claim that if in a production environment, or this is where kind of the risk comes to mind, some cases we cannot chase a developer that's 6 time zones away and ask him to cross the T or dot the I. We have to actively remediate when the mistake happens, sometimes before it happens. But maybe in a development environment, we can be more lenient. Maybe we can start a process. Maybe we can start a ServiceNow event and let the developer educate him in the process. And what I want to suggest here is that when we look at cloud environments today, and with CloudGuard Dome 9, we secure customers with hundreds of thousands of VMs across thousands of individual cloud accounts. You have to figure out that you have to have this flexibility when you enforce a security policy on the public cloud. So what is it that we have to offer you in the sense of kind of combining all the story together, how Check Point CloudGuard, yes, technologies, its acquisition of Dome 9 and some other cool things that you've heard of, how it all comes down when we look at this the CloudGuard defense system, when we talk about offering our customers going forward. So first and foremost, on the network, we have the best, the CloudGuard YAS solution, the best advanced threat prevention mindset to segment the network on the macro level, augmented by a CloudGuard Dome 9 network security module that helps you to look and understand the internal, the inside of the VPCs, what's happening there, how the network is segmented. On the identity front, we have the CloudGuard Dome 9 IAM Safety, which is an identity protection solution that keeps me sleep very well at night, knowing that my head of DevOps, head of R&D, even if their identity is compromised, even if somebody hacks their laptop and waits until they log in with their super user credentials to the public cloud, that same attacker will not be able to wipe my storage, rotate my encryption keys, and then call me for 7 or 8 figure ransom. I don't know how much Check Point is paying. When we talk on the cloud control plane, we have presented the Dome 9 compliance engine, which is the system that rigorously looks at thousands and millions of configuration elements across your entire cloud infrastructure, every few seconds, analyzing them, seeing them, finding that developer that left a storage bucket open, or a developer that used the wrong cipher on a newly deployed mobile backend to one of the applications, and mitigating that. And if that's not enough, I'm also happy to introduce what we call CloudGuard Magellan. And CloudGuard Magellan is our venture into big data analysis of live traffic. It's designed for the public cloud, but as Dorit shared yesterday, we're going to find some other uses for the same backend, the same technology in other elements of the Checkpoint product family. And Magellan constantly analyzes the network traffic, the cloud audit trail of what's happening in my environment, making sure that no bad guy was able to get in. And I'm happy to say that while we are in the beginning of this journey, we have come a long way. So when you're starting with us, when you're connecting to our cloud story, I can guarantee you that you'll find thousands of very happy customers that use this technology today, essentially to be the best as they can when we talk about cloud security. And because remember what Gartner said, a lot of the attacks are opportunistic. If you'll do your job, somebody will harass the other guy that did not do his job. And the cloud is big, and we can make sure that with this technology, you will be as safe as possible. Now, we have the cloud breakout as part of the session. There are 4 breakout sessions today. I urge you to come, listen, and learn about our cloud story, and you'll be happy to see that Checkpoint is committing to making cloud secured into the future. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker has always loved computers, ever since his first Atari. From global ISPs to government networks, throughout his career, he has always sought out the most challenging environments. He leads the development and delivery of Checkpoint's advanced services, including the Checkpoint Incident Response Team. His Atari may be long gone, but he still enjoys playing with Legos. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dan Wiley.
Hello. Thanks for calling the Checkpoint Incident Response Team. For assistance with a security incident, please press 1.
Hi, Checkpoint Incident Response Hotline.
Oh yeah, hi. We have a big problem over here. Our system's been infected with ransomware.
Okay, how many machines are infected?
I don't know, hundreds. I'm looking at a lot of machines.
Are these workstations or servers?
Both. Most are servers. Our business is dead in the water. Our stores can't accept payments. We're losing money. I just don't know what to do, and my job's on the line.
We can help you with this. We're the Checkpoint Incident Response Team, and we handle these kind of events every day.
On Labor Day weekend, a retailer called us, and they said we're losing $1.4 million a day in lost revenue because none of our payment terminals can actually accept payments at this time. We are screwed. I need your help. What actually is interesting here is that phone call. You hear a human emotion, and that emotion is one of the key things that we find in some of our incidents. We find our customers that are actually suffering from serious stress when they have this amount of threat in their environment. They have their CEO yelling at them because they're losing money. The CFO is calling. The board is calling. The wife is calling because you're not home. And by the way, that happens a lot. But the reality is you are in a situation where you have some serious stress. And one of the things that we find with our customers is our customers are actually suffering from grief. And not just a grief of sort of a loss of a family member or a major grief, but definitely a grief where you have the 5 stages of grieving. And the first stage is denial. Almost all of our customers that have experienced a breach, that haven't prepared for it, that haven't actually understood what a major breach looks like go through a moment of complete denial. Now, I do think some of you look like Beaker, but we'll table that for a minute. But the reality is you kind of get to the moment where you think, oh shit, this isn't happening to me, but guess what, folks? It is. And are you really ready for it? This denial also goes into cases where we've seen customers just not respond to an event. We've seen folks and the system administrators sit on incidents for weeks or months, just making it much more complicated to deal with. I encourage you, don't do that, because things get much worse. The next emotion that we see our customers face is anger. Anger is the most difficult emotion, because customers have a tendency of lashing out towards you. They have a tendency of lashing out to their employees, and they get very, very aggressive. We've had customers scream in the phone. We've had customers beg and borrow and try to steal their way out of this, but they can't. The anger is real. I would ask that if you are angry during an incident, take a chill pill. Or go to Colorado. The next emotion we find our customers find themselves in is bargaining. This one is also an incredibly interesting moment in the life cycle of some ransomware. Why? Because at this moment, the attacker gives you an out. They give you an ability to take away all the pain immediately, and they offer you a ransom note with a nice little note that says, hey folks, if you give us just a handful of dollars, we'll stop all the pain. Now, anyone that's been through to a psychologist will know that if you try to skip a phase in grieving, it don't work. You go back to the beginning and start all over again. Do not pay the ransom. We ask that you do not. Why? Because it perpetuates the whole economy, and it actually makes the situation significantly worse in the long term, because the economic reality will dictate that folks will go after this attack vector. Please do not pay the ransom. The next phase, and this one is the most difficult, is depression. We've actually had customers cry on the phone with us. Why? Because if you put yourself in the situation, if you have someone coming to you and saying, we're losing millions of dollars, or someone's life is on the line, there's a human emotion to that. And some folks get severely depressed. I certainly do not recommend taking the Kermit route. Although we do know Kermit is quite upset about being completely, the poor butt of everyone's joke. Please don't go the route of Kermit, and we'll try not to do lines and shots of rum, although we are doing shots of tequila tonight, so if anyone would like to join us. But please, the depression cycle is real. Take a moment. If you need a breather, definitely seek out others to help you during these incidents. You're not alone. The next phase is acceptance. Acceptance is realizing that this grief is real, that you have to go through it, that you have to fight for it. But the acceptance is also the realization that you're not alone, that you can interface with others to actually help you through these incidents. And the incident response team is here for you to actually help you through these kind of events. Now, what's interesting about the case that we started with is that it was actually quite interesting. We actually identified, after a conversation with a customer, the entire attack cycle. This is actually critically important to understand how to respond to attacks. In this case, this is an old story. I've been up here 3 years in a row, saying the exact same thing, which I believe is a sign of psychosis, that RDP was exposed to the internet. We've all learned that RDP exposed to the internet can lead to some significant threats. Just yesterday, Check Point released a press release where we found 25 vulnerabilities by our threat researchers specifically around RDP. That wasn't timed, that was just a coincidence. But the good news here is that you can actually do things about RDP. We also found that this customer had hosted all of this infrastructure in Azure, and they opened up RDP to allow remote access because they were a little lazy. They didn't realize that maybe you wouldn't want two-factor authentication or have a VPN protect against that infrastructure. They needed to be able to access it, and, well, crap. It's easy. Turn it on. RDP is easy. Now, what the attacker didn't know when he initially entered the system by doing a brute force login attack against the RDP session was that he actually had access to the primary SQL server that was hosted inside of Azure. This was patient 0. He then moved laterally after running Minikats and other key logging systems, obtained domain admin privileges, and then just moved laterally throughout the entire environment. Now, the interesting thing is most people don't put protections on a SQL server, so he didn't even need to use malware to take on the rest of the environment. All he did was move laterally utilizing OS tools that are available to him. He utilized and lived off the land without any additional components that were installed. Those components are now giving away attackers' MOs, and they're purposely not utilizing any malware in these attacks. They're just using the operating system tools that are available to them. The attacker then also created a PowerShell script, and that PowerShell script was undetectable by most of the preventions that this customer had installed in their systems. And all he had to do was literally copy and paste it from one machine to another, or just run a little batch script and deploy the PowerShell script everywhere. And the story is also common. The attacker hit return and encrypted all of his critical infrastructure. Now, once we started looking at this malware, we found it's the same malware that we'd seen multiple times in the last year. It was SamSam. Now, SamSam has a sordid past, many high-profile victims. It suspected some nation-state involvement with these attacks, and millions of billions of dollars have been extorted. Anyone from Atlanta, Georgia, you guys know how it feels to have SamSam impact your infrastructure and your services in Atlanta. And this has actually happened across the entire country multiple times this last year, and it just continues. Now, remember that anger feeling that we had? One of the things that we struggle with is that we have no release for our anger typically. I do. I have a punching bag, and I try to get some of my aggression out. But in our cases, we can't really give a customer a remediation on being able to deal with that anger. But in this case, we got these assholes. Except we didn't. So the good news is we know who they are, right? They're 2 Iranians that live in Iran. That now don't really have the ability to leave Iran, and I don't think we're going to be arresting them anytime soon. But at least we know who they are. Hey, that's woohoo! That should be your satisfying moment for your anger relief. But the good news is that we do make progress around some of these cases. So don't give up when you do have an incident. You will, at some point in the future, have some relief around knowing that these guys might be going to prison, or at least not leaving Iran. One of the two. Now, as we progressed with this case, it's also incredibly important to ensure that we have containment, eradication, and recovery of the environment. Remember, I'm having this conversation, right? But remember, this poor guy has got the clock ticking and the CEO over his head saying, I'm losing $1.5 million, $1.4 million a day here. Let's get this thing sorted. We stepped in and we started helping the customer actually do remediation absolutely immediately when the attack occurred. The first thing we did is we did a full compromise assessment inside of their environment. I cannot stress enough how important this phase is, because we actually didn't know which systems the attacker actually touched beyond the ones that actually had the ransomware. So we actually utilized a system to be able to actually scan the infrastructure within a few hours. We were able to identify all the machines that the attacker had touched. We were able to identify all of the ransomware elements that were involved. And we were able to give a full landscape assessment of what was going on live in the environment. But as I was saying earlier, this guy was using valid credentials in Active Directory. So if anyone knows anything about AD, home skillet's got some back doors, and they're inside of AD, which then meant we had to rebuild AD during Labor Day weekend, and we actually had to rebuild AD from scratch for 15,000 users. Anyone's ever done that? That's not fun, right? That also means that we have to rejoin PCs to the domain, and don't do that if you can try to avoid it. Now, we also deployed additional security controls because this customer did not have any next generation controls built into their systems. Boo, you need controls, yay! Make sure that they're deployed. Make sure that you have behavioral endpoint protections, right? Make sure that you have control and visibility of all of the segments of your network. Maybe think about segmentation because, hey, this guy was moving laterally pretty easily. And don't forget that segmentation extends all the way into your cloud. Somehow everyone forgets that the cloud is now an extension of your world. You might want to put some controls there. Now, for this customer, we actually rebuilt all the servers from backup. This attacker did not find their offline backups. That was their only out, period. We've had cases where the attackers were able to identify online backups, and there were no offline backups, and the attacker was able to take out the entire infrastructure. In a lot of those cases, our customers actually paid the ransom to be able to restore in a rapid fashion. It's not recommended. Make sure you have those controls in place. Make sure that you have the implementation of those advanced controls and you know how to use them. Make sure that you have a formalized incident response plan so when the shit does hit the fan, you do have a chance to actually recover quickly. It will happen. It's not an if, it's going to be happening to you. Don't expose RDP to the internet. I've said this 3 years in a row. I'll say it till the cows come home. Don't do it. Make sure you have additional security controls around RDP. Ensure that all those controls are applied to the cloud. Make sure you have that plan so you don't face those 5 stages of grief. In 2018, the Checkpoint Incident Response Team handled over 500 cases, of which over half were related to ransomware events, and 35 of those ransomware events were SamSam alone. Those stats are depressing. That is a significant number of customers that were impacted by these attacks. You must evolve your security controls in real time. The attackers are evolving consistently. You've heard it this entire week. Bad guys evolve. We must also evolve. Our security controls, our infrastructures, all of our elements of our network need to be evolving with these threats. It's just not happening for everybody. Please spend the extra time to get those controls in place or you'll be in trouble. And if you do find yourself in a situation and you do need assistance, please feel free to contact the Checkpoint Incident Response Team 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Please reach out if you need our assistance. With that, thank you very much. Have a wonderful conference.
Okay. Whoa, that was Dan Dice Clay, I think. What's in the... Never mind. Great. We are going to take our break right now until 11. The code for the scavenger hunt is CyberTalkNow, all one word, all lowercase. If anyone's doing the scavenger hunt, again, CyberTalkNow. All right, so we will be back in here at 11. What time are we going to be back in here? 11, thank you. See you then.